Welcome to the Love and Sex Today show with Dr. Doug Weiss. Doug has been healing hearts and relationships for decades. He's helped thousands of people release the shame and the guilt, restoring hope, helping people get free from addictions to enjoy a better sex and love life. Here he is, your host, Dr. Doug Weiss.
Welcome to Love and Sex Today. I'm Dr. Doug Weiss, and I'll be your host on this Volume 3 called Married and Alone, Intimacy Anorexia. Now, if you are married and alone, you're going to want to listen to this podcast for sure. If you're feeling unwanted, disconnected, if you feel starved in your marriage, if you feel like you have to beg to be praised, to be touched, to be wanted, if you feel like you are more a roommate than a lover, you're probably married to someone who has intimacy anorexia. And you might not have ever heard that term before, but today it may totally change your life. I can't tell you how many thousands of people all over the world, Asia, South America, Europe, Canada, all over the US, who heard the word intimacy anorexia, looked it up on the internet, or saw something on YouTube or one of our posts somewhere or a TV show we've done, and instantly connected to that. I had someone recently who saw someone else talking about intimacy anorexia. Two professionals were talking about the term, and that's a term that I coined. It's a term that I came up with after seeing couples after couples frustrated and not getting better. And it gives a language, it gives a paradigm for what the problem is and how to get better. And they watched this clip and they said, "That's me." And they showed it to their spouse and they said, "Yeah, that's you." And they got on a plane, they came to an intensive, and their lives are dramatically changed, having sex, connected. And I can tell you it's happened again and again and again. So what is intimacy anorexia? Let's walk through this, okay? In our short time together, the definition of intimacy anorexia is the active withholding of emotional, spiritual, and sexual intimacy from your spouse. Now, this does not show up in any other relationship. People in your neighborhood think your spouse is great. People at their work think they're great. People in their other communities think, wow, you're lucky to be married to that person, whether it's a man or a woman. Bob or Barbie's wonderful. But when they come home, they're on their phone, they're on the computer, they're in the garage, they're volunteering somewhere. They don't connect to you. It's like when they come home, they're a different soul. Because, see, you're their primary relationship. And intimacy anorexia will only show up in marriage, generally speaking. And so let me walk through these characteristics. And if this sounds like you, get a pen and paper. This will be very practical today. And just kind of mark a yes or no for every characteristic I'm talking about. And as you check these off, I'll let you know at the end how many you need to maybe do some research on intimacy anorexia, because you're going to want, if you're living in this, you're married and alone, you're in pain. You feel dry inside. You feel alone, you feel confused because nobody would understand, nobody would believe you, how alone you are. But you know. So let's go through this together. Number one, now I'm going to give you a keyword and explain that keyword. The first keyword is busy. The intimacy anorexic is too busy for their spouse. They got plenty of time for people in their spiritual community, their political party, their neighborhood HOA. Got plenty of time for the kids, but they don't got any time for you. I mean, dating you, not really that important. Okay, spending quality time with you, if you make them. Okay, so busy. Number two, blame. They will blame you for all the problems in the relationship. Well, you made me do that. If you wouldn't have done that, I would have done this. They rarely say I'm sorry, rarely say I'm wrong, because they can't be bad. It's like if you even try to insinuate that their judgment wasn't perfect, they're going to turn around on you. They're going to blame you. Oh, you're so critical. Okay? And so they're too busy for you. They blame you. Now, the next keywords are withholding. The next one is withholding love. Now, withholding love is unique because they will withhold love exactly the way you want to be loved. And I know this because I've worked with thousands of couples. And intimacy anorexic, if they have a first, let's suppose the intimacy anorexic guy, and he marries his first wife, she receives love by gifts. He won't buy her gifts. Even on her birthday and Christmas, he will ignore gifts, which is so painful. But then he divorces her. Well, she divorces him usually. And then he marries Carol. Carol likes to be touched. Well, he won't touch her. Even though he touched the first wife, he won't touch this one because it would make them close. Because the whole objective of intimacy anorexia is to create and maintain distance with their spouse. Okay? They're really married to themselves. They're really married to the idea of being safe, not necessarily married to the idea of making it safe for you. So they withhold love exactly the way that you like to be loved. And you've told them, love me this way, do this. This would make me feel loved by you. And they won't do it except when they're in serious trouble, the marriage is threatened, and they will show up for 7 to 10 days and they'll be the best. And you'll think, oh my gosh, they really have changed. And as soon as you get to where you relax, they disappear again. withhold love, withhold praise. They might praise you in public, but privately when you're at home, very rarely will you get "you're awesome, you're amazing, you're creative, you're intelligent. I'm so glad I married you. You're beautiful, you're handsome, you're strong, you're such a good provider." Like, you won't hear nurturing coming from your spouse at home. Now, if you're in public, maybe with some friends or some maybe family members, they might say something nice about you, but that's to make them look good. It doesn't feel like they're trying to really nurture you. So busy, blame, withholding love, withholding praise, withholding spiritually, even if they're the medicine man or the rabbi or the pastor or some kind of spiritual leader in their community, no matter what community that is, they won't connect with you spiritually. They won't pray with you or share spiritual ideas with you or whatever the rituals are in their community. They'll do it with others, but not with you. Okay? Sex. Now, withholding sex can show up in a couple ways because some men are willing to have sex with their wives, but not be intimate during sex. And so sex feels like you were used, feels like you're alone. They might be in a fantasy world. They might just be disconnected. It feels very alone. That's one way of withholding sex, is just by not being present. The other is by withholding either certain behaviors or withholding sex itself, where they really don't want to be sexual with you. Now, oftentimes they're either doing porn or other things, but they don't want to be sexual with a real soul. And so they avoid you and blame you and push you away or make you even feel bad for wanting sex. So, there's that type of withholding sex where, I had a couple recently. It's been years since they've been sexual. Years. I had one couple that was 20 years. And they did an intensive here in Colorado Springs at Heart to Heart Counseling Center. And they did what, the protocol for getting better. And within weeks, they were having sex, and they really changed their marriage and having a good marriage right now. So busy, blame, withholding love, praise, spiritually, sexually, feelings, unwilling or unable to share their feelings with you. You might catch them on the phone talking about a feeling, but you don't get to hear their heart. It can take hours for you to find out what they're feeling. And it's really painful. Okay, anger. Anger and silence will be the next key words. They use anger or silence as a way to control in the relationship. They won't talk to you sometimes. I have one couple who didn't talk for a week, and they slept in the same bed. Didn't say a word. He would not talk to her. And this can happen as a woman too. She can control with rage. She can control with silence. Okay? So feelings, anger and silence. Criticism. Criticism has two ways of going. There can be ongoing criticism where it's kind of like nitpicking and constantly going at the other person's heart. Okay, or it could be ungrounded. It's like it's totally not true. And anorexics don't need truth. They have what we call the story. It's usually this negative narrative. Your spouse is Darth Vader in some way, and there's always this negative narrative about them. They never read your mind in the way of believing the best about you and the best motives you have, which are usually the truth. They really create these negative narratives. Okay, and so criticism. They don't need any facts for criticism, so it can be totally ungrounded. I know that you're jealous, or I know that you're controlling, or I know that you're this, and that's why I didn't approach you. I knew you were angry at me, so that's why for the last 5 years I didn't have sex with you. I'm like, okay, come on now. 5 years? She wasn't angry for 5 years. Okay, you might have been a good day here and there. So it doesn't have to make sense. Intimacy anorexia doesn't make sense at all. It's totally emotional. So we got busy, we got blame, withholding love, withholding praise, withholding spiritually, withholding sex, feelings, anger and silence, okay? Some control with money. Not often, but when they do, it's really vicious. They'll control the money, okay? And so, if you have 5 or more of these, okay, you are probably living with someone who has intimacy anorexia. And just the last characteristic I would say is roommate. If you feel like a roommate, you're probably living with someone with intimacy anorexia. And that's why you feel married and alone. Hey, let's try to do this. Hey, let's try to spice it up. And in the Married and Alone book, this whole content's coming from the book, Married and Alone. And you can go to the website, Love and Sex Today, click books, and Married and Alone or Intimacy Anorexia. That'll get you the content that we're talking about today. And there's DVDs on that as well. But you feel like a roommate. Actually, you would feel better if you had a roommate, because a roommate would actually care. It would feel like they would, consider you and stuff like that. With intimacy anorexia, you feel alone. And especially if you're in a religious system, that can make it even worse. Because who do you talk to? Who do you say, I know you think, Barbie's wonderful, but she doesn't connect with me. She hasn't asked me for sex in 5 years. She never asked. And she makes me feel like weird because I want to have sex. Like, I know you like Bob, and Bob's a great guy, but he hasn't touched me in like months. He hasn't said a nice thing about me since last Christmas. And the person who lives with intimacy anorexia is the person who pays the bill. The intimacy anorexia is perfectly fine with the relationship because they are safe. And as long as they're safe, everything's fine. What it costs you is not really a concern to them. So they're not going to take the aspirin for your pain. So if you're married and alone, you're the one who's going to have to take the first step. So let's walk through some of that. The first step is get educated. Find out what intimacy anorexia is. Find out if that applies to you. Okay? See if that's what's going on. If that's what's going on, then there is a protocol. There's workbooks. There's groups they can go to. There's treatment they can get, and you can start walking down the road. But oftentimes they're in denial about what they're doing. Okay, because they think they're wonderful people even at home, even though they ignore you and are disconnected, most of the time. And so, and sabotaging you, criticizing you, and blaming you. And it's like, come on, what's going on here? It feels insane. I can't tell you how many people have told me that exact phrase. Dr. Weiss, this feels crazy. Okay, I want to have a relationship with my spouse, but they won't have one. I know exactly what they're talking about. And that pain is just, it's so hard to lay next to someone you feel who doesn't love you. They say the words sometimes, but there's not this sense of when they touch you that they want to really be connected to you. It feels empty and alone, those little pecks on the head and the cheeks feel like more discounting and dismissing than passionate and reinforcing. So if that's where you're living, you want to at first get information on that. Secondly, take steps for yourself, because you can get the Intimacy Anorexica video or have them watch downloaded or something like that, and sometimes it'll open up the doors for conversation about this. But you might want to get some support. If you call the Counseling Center, 719-278-3708, they can give you the support group information on that, or talk to a counselor. This is serious. And if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, this is the first time someone actually identified what's going on in my relationship, my marriage, it's been painful. And, we look good on the outside, but we are so far apart on the inside. So for you, I would say, take the first steps, get information, get support for yourself, number 2. Okay, if you need help for yourself, do that. Then start taking the steps as far as addressing the issues. Make sure you have clear boundaries and set some boundaries for yourself. Like, this is not going to, if you're going to be silent with me, I'm not doing X, Y, or Z. Learn how to have boundaries in this relationship, because intimacy anorexia is almost like an addictive process. We treat it in an addictive way. We have 12-step groups. We have workbooks. We give them a community, because it's almost like they're addicted to withholding. Okay, kind of like the food anorexic who's addicted to withholding food from themselves, which makes no sense. Okay, neither does saying, I will love you, honor you, and cherish you, and then withhold love from you. And sometimes it even starts on the wedding night, or usually within the first year. It's like, this is not the person I was dating. Feels totally different. So if that's you today, I really hope you got some help. I want you to go to loveandsextoday.com, subscribe there, then go to iTunes and write a review. Out of those people who write a review, one of you is going to get chosen to have an hour conversation with yours truly, Dr. Doug Weiss. And we'll talk about your life, your relationships, how you can take the next step to get to a next level for yourself. Okay, don't forget the free chapter this month. It's going to be from the 10-Minute Marriage. I think it's called Dinner's Ready, but it really should have been called something like Never Argue About Sex Again. And so it's a great chapter on how to be in agreement sexually and how to do that. And as always, we want you to have the best love and best sex today.
That's it for our episode of Love and Sex Today with Dr. Doug Weiss. Head on over to loveandsextoday.com and be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes. When you do, and you post a review on iTunes, some lucky listener is going to win every single month a private confidential coaching call with Dr. Doug Weiss. Also, feel free to ask any question you like. You can push a button, speak your question, and Dr. Doug will answer your question in a future episode. So be sure to subscribe to the show. Doug's got some great gifts for you, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.